single day.
Sein Sowjetzeichen soll er vor sich hertragen und wir werden in unserem Zeichen wieder siegen.
I have been getting a number of phone calls and emails from residents who passively aggressively want to offer their thoughts about something that's going on in the community related to code enforcement, but they don't want to submit their name. I know we have a state statute that we have to adhere to, and I understand that, but they were told, one particular person, I got a phone message yesterday, one particular person was very upset that, that they were told by someone on the city staff that we don't do code enforcement. We don't do code enforcement to the extent where we can go after someone if they're violating the city statute or the state statute, unless they submit their name. But they weren't told the part about they have to submit their name. So they're very concerned that the city is not doing any code enforcement for things that are blatantly against our city code. And one example in this case was there is someone on who is using a vacant lot next door to their house who are now using it for storage of a trailer, a boat, a pickup truck, and now other neighbors are using the parking lot for their stuff. And they're very distressed that it's turned into an excess vehicular parking lot of different kinds. And I'd like to know, what can we do about that, and why does it take a city council member to report it, to have someone take action on it? Because this is really getting out of control. I can tell you on my street, there's someone that routinely parks on the vacant lot, on a vacant lot next door to a house. There were 2 cars that were parking on a vacant lot for over 3 weeks on the street across the canal from me. And, you know, at what point do we not enforce code?
Well, we always enforce code when we're aware of the violation, from observations of from code enforcement officers. That includes not only the code enforcement staff, but also the city police, who are also code enforcement officers. And as the city prosecutor, I can tell you that we routinely bring cases against the storage of trailers, vehicles, and other items on vacant property that is observed by code enforcement in their routine activities. There's a limited number of code enforcement officers, and so we are somewhat reliant upon citizen complaints. And until the legislature kind of changed the way we did business, it wasn't necessary for a citizen to give their name when they filed a complaint. But now it is. So we have to comply with the state law, but we continue to enforce the city's codes when they're aware of the violation.
And most people are reluctant to put their name forward, so
No.
Then they won't report something, and it's a problem. It's a really big problem. So how do we get around this?
We try to get the law changed that allows us to accept the routine, anonymous complaints, but I think Lisa may have another solution.
Well, Lisa Hannon, zoning official. Our code officers are proactive. We're out on the streets every day. Again, we're limited on our number of code officers and our lot mode coordinator. When we see it, they act on it. We have been receiving several calls about some outdoor storage and about some parking of commercial vehicles, and the people don't want to give their name.
They will
And
not.
when they don't give their name, we cannot, by state statute, like Mr. Levin said, we cannot initiate that code case. But again, we're out there on the streets. We don't wait just for the phone calls to come in. Do we miss things? I'm sure we do. But if somebody else wants to be the complainant and get us names and numbers, we will be happy to take a look at it, and we enforce the best we can.
And what I'm talking about in most cases is the overnight parking on the vacant lots.
Okay.
And that's
So-
what's really gone
That
kind
needs,
of off the
we need
rails.
to know about that, but it's not a violation to park on a vacant lot unless it's between the hours of 1 AM and 5 AM, so then we defer that to the police department.
Yeah.
We send emails to the police department when we are notified with a viable complainant name and telephone number, as state statute makes us have. And then we send it to our police department and dispatch, and they will go out and take a look at it. And they know that they have the discretion to write a citation or not.
But that requires.
It's
Because
still
the code
requires-
officer's never gonna see that, because they're not working from 1 to
Exactly.
5. So
That's
that
exactly my
requires
point,
a
yeah.
citizen to
Yeah.
come forward, state their name, and make a complaint in order to have the police officer go out.
In order for code to notify the police that they need to go check that vacant lot overnight because we're receiving complaints about parking overnight. That is correct.
With the law the way it is now, what does that complainant's name, what happens with that? In other words, if I complain, and you have a record that I'm the person, I mean, is that being shared with the person that
If they ask for it, we have to share it. It is a public record, yes.
Can somebody call their city council member and ask to complain? And then the city council member is the one that's calling?
That's what's happening.
Well,
They're all calling me.
And,
That's,
and
yeah.
since, I'll use the city manager maybe as an example.
I mean, call the city manager? Great.
if-
I'm just kidding.
You know, if the city is aware of a problem that doesn't, if the city is aware of a problem, we bring that problem to code enforcement. And if the officer goes and does an inspection, it's the city initiating the complaint, not a citizen. And to the extent that the code enforcement officer can be the witness to the violation occurring and they're able to observe it, then it's not necessary for there to be a citizen witness. But some cases, particularly those that occur when our enforcement officers aren't out there, can only be witnessed and complaint driven by a resident. And those are the kinds of cases that the statute says we cannot take action on.
I'm going to put something in my newsletter again this week about this because I continue to get calls every single week. And people are scared to put their name forward because they don't want to risk the repercussion that may occur from ratting out their neighbor. And it's a terrible law.
And rightly so, so.
I know why it happened. I understand why it happened, but it's a terrible law for the most part for people who are trying to live in a nice community and they don't want to see that stuff sitting around in people's yards.
And if someone does call in and complain, if we issue a citation to someone, it doesn't necessarily say, hey, we got a complaint from your neighbor because you're doing this.
Right.
It says, here's your code violation, needs to be corrected. Now, if they say, did someone complain, then of course you have to say yes. And if they say, do you have a copy of who it was, that's where the name comes out. So.
Okay, thanks. We didn't get anywhere, did we? Okay. City clerk, I don't think she has anything